Welcome to the Fill Your Cups podcast. We're your hosts,
Morgan
and Bailey. Guys, we are so excited that you're listening with us today. If you are tuning in, thank you so much. Go ahead and send this over to a girlfriend, a coworker, maybe not, a family member, anyone that you think might benefit from an episode like this. It helps us a lot. It helps us grow. And we'd love to have more listeners, and we'd love to hear what you guys think.
We'd really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Quick disclaimer, if you are listening into this episode and saw the title and freaked out because you are one of my coworkers, I am not ready to quit my job, so don't freak out.
My coworkers either, but you don't listen to this podcast. I'm not ready to leave either.
This is more, we're talking a little bit more about our past and ways that we've come to figure out that we're ready to quit our job.
Move on. Yeah, in this episode, we will be talking a lot about knowing when it's time to move on. When we first kind of had this idea, we wanted to talk about relationships and jobs and friendships and things like that. And then we realized that if we were talking about all of these different categories, we would be here for hours.
We can chat.
So we ended up just taking it down to the one of how to know when it's time to leave your job.
Yeah. So really, we spend a bulk of the episode running through some red flags that we experienced in previous jobs. Mm-hmm. And we do share quite a bit, pretty vulnerably, about experiences that we had being in past jobs that just weren't aligned anymore. But at the end, we do give some tips for either if it's not time maybe to change jobs, how you can improve your current situation.
Adjust.
Yes. And then also some tips that we have for those of you that are like, yes, yes, and yes to all of the red flags and you're ready to switch up. So that's what this episode's about. Can't wait to dive in.
Let's get it. Well, Morgan, what's filling your cup today?
I have a ginger ale Zevia. You know I love those.
Yes.
And what about you?
I have a vanilla cola Zevia. Thanks
wine
to
glasses.
you.
I love pouring stuff like this in a wine glass because it just makes it more fun.
Absolutely. I pour everything I can into a wine glass.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Even water.
So we always love to start with what's filling our cups. Hopefully you have something tasty in yours. Mm-hmm. But we also love to start with a shout out.
Yes.
So today we are shouting out our very one and only sister. I shouldn't say one and only.
We do have a lot.
There's 5 of us.
Yeah.
5 of us, yeah.
5 girls.
Sometimes I forget. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so our sister who has been listening so steadily and constantly since our first episode, and I believe every Monday too, like Monday mornings, you know, on the dot. When
she's always one of the first ones I hear
from. Yes, and she has been reposting or not even reposting because sometimes she just posts on her own, but our podcast episodes on her Facebook. So we want to shout out Julia.
Yes.
Thank you so much. She's our big sister. Maybe at some point we need to have her on for big sister advice or something.
Oh, it's kind of cute that she's both of our big sisters.
Yeah. Because you're my little sister and I'm your big sister.
I always just think of you as my big sister. Yeah. And I also think of Julia as my big sister, but I never think of her as also your big sister.
Big sister.
Weird.
That's
cute.
Funny. Well, yeah. So thank you so much, Julia. We want to shout you out for sharing us all over social media, and I'm sure verbally as well. And
I believe that.
She's also always telling me she'll like. I feel like she's messaged us both before, or she'll like text me separately and be like, "Oh, I was thinking about this thing," and you know.
Yeah. So. No, me too. She was one of the first people that really hyped me up after we did our first episode, because obviously that was really nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was like rambling, which I'm getting very comfortable with now. But she was telling me, she was like, "No, I love like hearing the random things you say," or like I feel like this is funny and blah blah. And I was like, "Thank you." So it really she gave me so much confidence after our very first episode, and that is just she's also a words of affirmation love language person, so and I feel that like from her, she gives lots of words of affirmation. So. Always makes me feel so much better.
Yeah. And actually, aren't you too?
Oh yeah.
Words of affirmation's big for you, right?
1,000%. Yeah. Giving and receiving.
So there you go. Yeah.
So shout out to Julia. That wasn't even planned.
No, it wasn't.
So let's get into this episode. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, so to be totally honest, the idea of this episode came from I don't think I told you this quite, but we have had a lot of turnover at Community Blood Center recently, just in my department, and I don't think it's because of any one thing, but I think a lot of people are just kind of ready for something else. A lot of people had been there right around the sweet spot, like 3-4 years.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes, maybe even 5 years, I'm not sure. I feel like sometimes after that amount of time, if it's not sitting right, you move on to the next thing. And so one person in particular, our director of our department, Andrea, she just left, and she...
Really?
Yeah, did I not tell you that?
No, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, it was kind of a big deal, honestly. She had been there like over 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But
Crazy.
honestly, I was so inspired by her leaving. I feel like people don't think that when like someone leaves a job, there's this essence of like, oh, everybody's gonna have low morale and blah blah blah, and it does suck. The transition for sure. It does suck having to, you know, train new people, hire new people. It's a long process, and especially when multiple people are leaving or whatever. So I do get that. But for me, I just love seeing people like move into something that's more aligned for them, especially when I've seen them unhappy. And it wasn't necessarily like Andrea didn't show that she was unhappy, but I felt like for a while this role that she was in, she just like did not, it wasn't super suited to like her personality or it just didn't seem like something that was giving her, like filling her cup, I guess, every day. And so she's moving into something totally different, a totally different industry. Yeah, she's working for like the government now, so state of Kansas. And so totally different than like a nonprofit and you know, the blood industry, not like health related or anything like that. So I just thought, honestly, I told her when she left, I was like, I just want you to know I'm super inspired by you. I think it's really cool that she didn't sit with the fear of like, oh, I've been here so long. What if I've put in all this work here? Does it amount to nothing if I leave? Like, no, because we only have so much freaking time on living on Earth, quite frankly. And we spend so much time at our jobs every day that I'm like, I don't want to spend that much time being in a job that doesn't work well for me and doesn't fill my cup more often than it drains it, you know? So anyway, so long-winded way of saying that's kind of how I came to this episode. And I just was really inspired by that. And I felt like Andrea has a daughter who is, I think, in college right now. And I was just like, if I was her daughter, I'd be really freaking proud. Like, I would just be like, that is awesome to say goodbye to something that you've put 20 plus years into.
Oh, man.
Because I feel like our culture is really good at like applauding people for sticking to things and starting things and being consistent and whatever. And I think those things are all really good. Yeah. But I feel like we applaud less when someone like quits something that was draining for them.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, what are you going to do now? Or like,
well, oh, you just quit?
Like, yeah. Or like someone who like, I don't know, what if someone went to like medical school and then decided they didn't want to become a doctor? Everybody's like, wow, you wasted all that time and all that money. And that doesn't really make any sense because I have all this time left of my life that I don't want to spend doing something that I hate.
Yes, I love that. Like, you don't want to wake up one day and realize you've gone down the totally wrong path and that you can't go back now. Like,
you can always go back. That's how I feel.
Aww.
So anyway.
Yeah, I guess that's what this whole episode's about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I feel like there are a lot of reasons we stay where we are when it's no longer aligned. And I just think that can apply to a lot of situations. Yeah. But I know we specifically today are kind of talking about the job world. So yes. I know both you and I have had experiences in the past where we've been in jobs where we felt like we stayed too long. Not 20 years long, but
no, not 20 years long for sure. I think that it's funny because you and I are kind of on opposite spectrums where I have had a lot more jobs than you have. Because when I do feel like I no longer am enjoying the job, I can't think about anything else except for how much I'm hating that job. And then it like takes over my life, and then I just always go and find some new job. But it's the reason I don't stay long at those jobs. I have been at my current job now for a year. That's really long for me. Normally I stop at like the 8-month mark. But it's because I was always just going right into the same exact field in the same exact category. Yeah. I was changing nothing up except for the employer. Yeah. And that was it. So I think it's going to be kind of fun to hear a little bit of the difference because you're a great employee on paper and in real life, but on paper I'm not a great employee. On paper you're a great employee. So I think it's going to be kind of exciting to hear the differences and kind of see where that goes.
Yeah, definitely. So I feel like this impacts life a lot.
Yeah, it just starts affecting you everywhere in every part of your life. Like you start getting physically burnt out, you start getting physically drained, you start like slacking in your everyday life and with your relationships. It can just hit you everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't just impact like you as a person, it also impacts like your workplace.
Yeah. So I was at a job that I hated. I was there just several months, way too long, and I started noticing it was really impacting the way I worked as an employer. So at the very end, whenever we finally parted ways, I just feel like I left as a bad employee. And that's never I never want to be a bad employee. I feel like I take a lot of pride in like the kind of worker and employee that I am. But because I hated this job so much and I was so burnt out of it, I started forgetting things. I started slacking off. I started like really becoming like, I don't know, uninterested or something in my coworkers. Like, I started like abandoning them a little bit is how I felt. Like, I'd be like, I don't have time for this. Or like I can't talk to you about this right now because I'm blah, 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 blah. Just because whenever you are too burnt out or you just can't, like you're not into your job, I feel like you don't work as well. And then it really just starts affecting everything else. Seriously, I would be missing deadlines and things like that. And then of course I'm getting a call and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so overstimulated. I'm like, I hate these people.
Which I feel like you typically have a very good work ethic.
Yes.
So I feel like it's abnormal.
It was very abnormal for me. And that was like it was too far gone at that point. Like if I had these signs of, hey, I really need to move on, instead of just thinking like I'll just stick it out, then none of this would have happened and I wouldn't have left as a employee that I wasn't proud of because I just hated it so much. I was so checked out that I wasn't doing any good. Yeah. Because I should have left months earlier than I did.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I feel like the job that I stayed a little bit too long in, it had nothing to do with the actual place or like the people that I worked with or anything like that. I hear people say all the time like you don't leave jobs, you leave bosses.
Yeah, yep. Same with coaches.
Oh,
you don't
really?
quit the sport, you quit the coach.
Oh, that was true for me actually. But interesting. Well, that wasn't the case at my previous job. I really liked my boss, I really liked my coworkers and everything. But ultimately honestly, the job just became a little bit too much for me. I just was like acquiring responsibilities that I couldn't juggle, and I just didn't have that skill set, I guess. And so it started affecting me really intensely. Like I would say I typically am pretty good with like work-life boundaries, but I was definitely taking work home with me, thinking about it a lot. I would have dreams about it.
I feel like you didn't start your really good work-life boundaries until it started getting really crazy at that job.
That's fair. Yeah. Maybe I didn't have to set a boundary because the boundaries already existed. Yeah. And then after they started like racing a little bit, I was like, okay, we need to draw these back up. You know, what were these again?
Back into place.
You know, and so so I feel like I wasn't sleeping well. I was like more on edge. You know, I was just kind of had a shorter temper. Yeah. And so there were a lot of signs that I think I ignored or that I just didn't know to look out for, that I wish that I had looked out for, that now I know and will look out for in any jobs that I have going forward. And so those are kind of the signs that I want to talk about today, because I feel like it could help somebody who maybe has been teetering on this fence of like, should I quit my job or should I do something else? And maybe this will be the push that's like you can do something different.
Yeah, definitely. I actually love that we're doing this episode today because there's a lot of people in my very close immediate life who are considering leaving jobs.
Really?
So there's a lot of people who have been considering leaving jobs, or like they really aren't interested in what they're doing, so they're like, but I don't know what to do, and things like that. And so I think it's really cool that we're going to do an episode on this today. Totally random that we chose to do it, and I know several people who are considering leaving their jobs. So I'm like, maybe like this really can be the things that they need to be listening for to figure out like you can do it.
Is it time to leave? Or
Is it time?
Yeah. Yeah, so I also do want to caveat that obviously we're in our mid-20s.
Yeah.
And even though we've had lots of different kinds of jobs before, I don't think either of us have been in like a career necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, my current job could be a career, but like I guarantee I'm not staying there forever, you know?
Yeah.
So someone who's like older and listening into this, they may have some different, it's a very generational thing. Like people our age,
super generational.
Yeah, people our age, and honestly just people in the workplace in general these days are not staying in jobs as long as like Andrea did for 2 decades. So little caveat that we may be, you know, leaning toward that direction a bit. But I truly this is my soapbox again. But I believe that your job means more to you than you mean to your company.
Oh, absolutely. Every time.
Even the best companies. I really like my company. They give me a lot of affirmation, whatever, praise. Like, there are people that I know care about me at my job, but I care about the paycheck, like the salary that I'm getting.
Yeah.
And what that would mean if it was gone. I care way more about that than the company cares about me. You know what I mean? So I just feel like
it's like that thing of people say, like, you're always replaceable. Like,
you are.
You
genuinely are. And I just feel like, why waste life? I mean, yeah, I don't know. We have a finite number of hours that it's like, yeah, why spend it dreading your job? So
yeah, I feel like that's the first sign.
It is, yeah. So our first sign we're going to talk about is like, do you dread going to work more than you look forward to it? And I know, like, this does not count if it's Sunday scaries and, you know what I mean? Like,
or like you're in a really busy project at work and you're going to be in it for like 2 weeks. You might have to see that one through.
Yeah. This is more like, I had this at my job before where I would just be thinking all the time in my free time, kind of like what you were saying with your job. I would just constantly in my free time be thinking, I do not want to go to work. I do not want to deal with this. I do not want to deal with this. I do not want to deal with this. And
I'd be like crying every night.
I would be crying. Yeah. I would go home crying. I would be in my car crying. And I would be like, I don't even have the energy to open up my door and get out and go into the house. Because I'm so I'm just dreading. I've just left the office and I'm already dreading going back.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a huge, huge sign.
Major red flag.
It's gotta be the biggest one.
Don't ignore it.
Do not ignore that sign at all. No, that is the biggest one. And I feel like once you go there, there's no coming back from that one.
Yeah.
That one's a hard one to really change up. A huge red flag that I had for me was I was losing skills that I had. So
what do you mean? In
the way that the job I was in was not right for me. It wasn't what I should have been doing. So, like, I don't know how many people know this, but I started out as a leasing agent a long time ago, and I was, like, awesome at that. And then I went into more of, like, the property management side, and I started losing my, like, sales skills.
Oh, which is crazy because you could sell me anything.
I don't know if I could anymore because, well, maybe not. I feel like I got it back a little bit. But when I was in one of my jobs, one of my like 10 jobs that I've had that I absolutely hated and was completely burnt out of, I just felt like I couldn't do it anymore. If I had to take a tour or something like that, I was like, I feel so awkward. I don't know what to do, even though that's what I used to be 100% amazing at. So I feel like that was a big thing for me. Or like I know a lot of people, like my husband, for example. He, in his job now, he's doing nothing that had to do with his degree. It's in the same field, but the things he's actually doing, he's forgetting skills that he learned in college, like in his classes, with like coding and things like that, because he's not doing any of that now. So it's been 3 years. So you feel like you're like
backsliding?
Yeah, you start backsliding because you just start forgetting the things that you should know.
Yeah,
I guess.
That's a good red flag. Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I've experienced that. I feel like I was saying in my previous job that I left and was in too long, I did feel like I was no longer that great at it, but I didn't know if I was losing skills as much as I was just like, I'm doing so many things that I can't do any one thing right. You know?
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes.
I hate when that happens.
Me
but
too.
the other big thing, and I talked a little bit about this, but like that I would say is a red flag or maybe a sign you need to move on is when it starts affecting you physically. Because I was losing sleep, which I genuinely believe sleep is like one of the best things for your health.
You have to have it.
Yeah, but losing sleep, I don't know, have you ever had like physical symptoms?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. I used to have, one time I remember I had a bunch of people over and we were watching Big Brother. Love watching that.
Oh, yeah. Do you guys still do that?
Yeah, but the
Oh,
season's
cool.
over, so we'll wait until next season. But yes, I had that, and then all of a sudden I thought about work, and I had an actual physical panic attack at my own house, and I had to go to my bedroom and like go to sleep and cry myself to sleep, and everyone else had to leave. Isn't that crazy?
Sorry. Yeah.
I know, crazy.
I didn't know about that.
Well, I don't like to tell people, except for all these podcast people.
Yeah. Yeah. So if work is affecting you that way, probably a sign that it's time to move on.
I like that earlier you said you were having dreams about it, because that's so real.
Yeah. Well, I would have dreams like I forgot to do something. I used to plan like luncheons and stuff like that. I would have dreams that I like forgot to message the speaker or something, and then no one showed up, and then like I had to ask somebody in the crowd like, will you go up and give a talk or whatever, and I was like, what? That makes no sense.
So you wake up panicked.
Yeah.
I used to have dreams that I would have conversations with people, and then like about work and things like that, and then the next day I'd be like, wait, did we have this conversation or did I dream that? Was that real life or did I make that up?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my red flags for myself was, and I feel like a lot of people do not leave jobs because they're thinking about the other people that they work with.
Yeah.
So you're thinking like, well, if I leave, it's really going to screw them over. Or like, if I leave, my team's going to be let down. Like, I feel like you can't think like that because you are replaceable. I'm sorry, but you are. You will be replaced. And it is going to be a little bit more work for your coworker, but I'm sorry, but they have like the option to leave too if they wanted, and like then they have the option to reach out and get help as they need. And I feel like you can't stay at a place for somebody else.
No, because honestly, you don't know what's going on in their life. You don't know if they're applying to other jobs.
Yeah,
like,
and they absolutely could be.
Yeah, that definitely has been the case in the past for me. So yeah, it's a good point. You can't really stay. Like, am I just staying for my coworkers? If the answer is yes, it might be a time to move on.
Yeah. I know someone specifically that we both know who was really hating their job and really wanting to leave their job, and they had been in it for multiple years, and the only reason they never left, and they're still there, is because they felt like they would let their team down. And I was like, you hate your job.
Yeah.
Like, you hate it. Why are you still there?
Yeah.
But still there.
I feel like another sign is if you keep waiting for, like, if you keep waiting for things to be back to the way that they were or something like that. Like, a lot of industries changed over COVID, so that wasn't prevalent for me, but it could be prevalent for people now that had jobs before COVID, and things have changed a lot, and they're holding out and waiting for them to get back to the way they were before. And it's like, honestly, you just have to face the fact that it may never be that way. But I feel like for me, that was something where every day, week, month, I was thinking, okay, well, just after this project I'll feel better. After this project I'll feel better. After this month I'll feel better, whatever. And it was just like I was holding out for something that was not coming back. And I think that there are just some points where it's like there's no turning back anymore. You know, once you get to a certain point, once you get to burnout, it's really, really hard to reverse that.
It really is. I've never come back from burnout.
Yeah, so
I don't know if anyone ever has.
No, but some people just stay in it longer
because you have to, or you don't really know.
Yeah, and you might be telling yourself a lie, like, oh, maybe this will change.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on top of that too, whenever you're thinking that it could go back to the way it was, if you were also holding out for something that they're telling you is going to happen and it never does. So
like a promotion or a raise or
like this new project that you're going to be ahead of, or anything like that. They're telling you these big changes. Like, oh my gosh, I was at a property and I was there. This was the longest property I was there at. And they were like, yeah, we're going to add this to the place and we're going to add this and this and this. And they had me plus all of my leasing agents telling every single tenant who moved in, oh yeah, by this date, this is going to be here. It literally, I still don't think it's happened to this day and it's been like 4 years.
Oh my gosh.
That's awful. Like,
That's awful.
But it made us so excited and they knew to get us geared up. And they just never did it.
So annoying.
So imagine if I had stayed or something like that. Like, I'd still be waiting. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that is ridiculous.
I also, sorry, I have another example.
No, I love it.
I had one time where corporate had told us if we got to this certain amount of, like, leases signed or something like that, we would all get, like, a $2,500 bonus, including, like, our maintenance team, every leasing agent.
Whoa.
Blah, 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 blah. So we all strived so hard for that goal. Then we all hit that goal. And then they said, actually, no, you don't get it because there was a stipulation that you had to hit, like, an average price in rent, and you guys didn't hit that price. And we're like,
are you kidding?
like, you're corporate. You give us those prices that we're giving these people. Yeah, so that was something we were all looking forward to it, and then they completely screwed us over.
Ew, I hate that.
I know, isn't that crazy?
So annoying.
Sucks so bad. So that's a huge red flag.
Yeah, I feel you for that. I said a little bit of this earlier when I was talking about Andrea and having, I don't think she would mind that I'm sharing her name. I guess it's too late to think about that.
No last name
But yeah, but something that I feel like keeps people in jobs when they've been there so long, like, for instance, even for you, like 1 year might seem like a long time and you're like, oh, I put in all that time or whatever, you know. But if you've been somewhere a long time, 5, 10, 20 years, there's this thing called sunk cost fallacy.
Yes.
You've heard of that?
Only recently.
Really? Okay.
Yes, in talks of jobs.
Really? Okay. Yeah. So maybe other people have heard it too, but the idea is it's this false pretense that you think that because you've been somewhere long enough, or even like it applies to finances too. Like a lot of people have this with food, like, oh, I bought it, so I need to eat it because otherwise I'm wasting it. No, that cost is already sunk. You paid the $5, okay, probably $10 for the fast food meal, you know, whatever. So you don't have to finish it. You're not wasting it because that money is spent. It's gone. Yeah. And it's the same thing with time. Like, time is honestly our most valuable means of, it's our most valuable thing that we trade in life. Yeah. So I feel like when the way that it applies to jobs is like, oh, Andrea could have been like, I've been here 22 years. If I leave, then all that time is wasted. It's like, you've already spent the time. Yeah. The time is spent. Going somewhere else will not make it wasted because it's already gone. Yeah. Like, it's already gone. Whether it's wasted or whether you feel like it was worth it or not is up to you. But, like, it's gone. So don't let that keep you from moving on to something else.
Absolutely. That can be such a hard one because that's such a mental thing that you have to get past because that really doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. Yeah. It really only has to do with yourself. So that's a hard one.
I feel like it's a big sign, though. Like, I always talk about paying attention to the conversations that you're having. But when you're talking to people about why you're not leaving your job, is this coming up a lot? Like, well, I've just been there so long. Yeah. I've just been there so long. I've just, you know, I've been there 10 years or whatever. If that's the case, if that's your number one reason for not leaving, it's not enough.
No, not at all. Not at all. I really like that. I think one of my last few things that I had was if you just have no passion or interest for what you're doing, like that sucks. And I think that that's how you know you're in the wrong field too. Yeah. And I know not everybody can have a job that they love doing. Like, I will probably never be a, like, interior designer. And that's okay. That's okay. But I also,
that's something that you would love doing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's something that I would love
clarify.
Doing. Yeah. Sorry, that's something that I would absolutely love to do. I know that not everyone can get a job in their greatest passion and their greatest love or anything like that. But if you are in a job where you don't like any of it, you don't like the work you're doing. You don't like the way you're having to, like, organize it. You don't like the way your team runs. You don't like the people that you work with. Like, you don't like a single part of your job. You could absolutely find something else that you do like to do and that you are, like, also good at. I feel like that's a huge thing for me is why are you in a job that you have no interest in? Yeah. I feel like that's another one of those things where I was talking about way earlier how it started affecting my coworkers. Like, if you have no interest in your job, you're not going to care about it at all, and then you're kind of screwing everyone you work with.
Yeah, truly.
Screwing them over.
Truly, honestly, we've lost a lot of people in the last few months, and I never felt like any of them were screwing us over. But honestly, wouldn't we rather have somebody new, even if we have to train them, wouldn't we rather have someone new who is interested and excited and may have the ability to excel a little bit further and change, you know?
Yeah, and sometimes even with, I mean, this is probably too much of a tangent, I don't know. But, like, with the affecting your coworkers and everything like that, and sometimes it's better to just get a new person in and leave. Like, if you're hating your job, you're probably going to have kind of a bad attitude.
Oh, definitely.
And then, you know, the one bad egg spoils the rest of them or whatever. Sometimes it's best to leave that situation. Or you had said, like, you didn't feel like any of your coworkers screwed you over, but some of them, I know we've talked before, like, some of them weren't pulling their weight anymore. So a lot of that weight was going on to you meeting certain goals. Like, they weren't doing that anymore because they didn't care.
I tell you what, in a job that is, I guess it's sales technically, it's like recruitment, but in a job where there are team goals that you have to meet in order to get your own incentive bonus, it really sucks when the team doesn't meet the goal, but you met the goal and you don't get your payout.
Yeah. That really sucks.
So, yeah, but I never would have blamed any one of them or anything like that.
Of course.
But yeah, exactly what you're saying.
Ways that, those are examples of how the way you're feeling can affect your coworkers.
Definitely, yeah. So these are a lot of like signs, red flags that it might be burnout. It might be a sign that it's time to move on. Before we talk about kind of some tips for how to move on to the next thing, because honestly, this might be all that you need to know. You could stop it right here and just be like, all right, it's time for the next thing, and get on Indeed, get on LinkedIn, and find something else. Yeah, maybe don't put in your 2 weeks. Bailey's very confident when she leaves jobs. I like to have one.
I always know I'll find another.
Yeah, there are endless jobs out there, but I like to have one lined up.
Yes.
But
okay, I've never actually quit a job without having another one lined up.
Really?
I'm not that irresponsible.
I'm pretty sure your last one. Yeah.
Yeah, my last one I didn't quit. He sold his business.
Oh, no. Okay, yeah, that's right. I thought the one before that. It doesn't matter.
No.
Okay, so before we talk about how to maybe take the next steps to finding a new job, quitting your job, whatever, we want to talk a little bit more about, okay, are there ways that you can feel more fulfilled in your current job? Which I know you had some good tips on that.
Yes. If you're listening and you're like, can't just leave my job, sorry. I think that
it hasn't gotten to this stage. Like maybe your job irritates you a little bit, or there's something that you could change that you might want to change about your job, but it hasn't gotten to this point.
Yeah, definitely. I think a big thing that you can do is putting up those boundaries, and a huge boundary you can do is turning off your email notifications, or like if you have Teams or you use Skype or what's the other one, Slack. Yeah. Like turning off those notifications once you get home. I think that's huge. I know some people have to be.
Do you have work email, like, on your personal phone?
No.
Okay.
Okay. I also have a really easy job compared to a lot of people. So, with every job before this one, I did have it on my phone.
You did? Okay.
Yes, 100%. And that's actually what sent me into my huge anxiety attack one time. Because
you, like, got something.
Yeah, I got an email at, like, 9 p.m. And I was like, oh, my God. Like, I can't do this. And then it wasn't even, like, a crazy email. It was some random, like, meeting email. And I was like, no. Sent me into a huge spiral. Yeah. So, I feel like avoiding that overwhelming feeling where you can is great. We should all strive to do that. So turning off all those notifications once you actually get home is a huge boundary for you, because if you get to work the next day and they're like, oh, why didn't you see this? I don't work at 9 p.m. I'm sorry. I'm here now. Yeah. What do you need now? And I know that's a hard thing to say, and can't apply to everybody, but it applies to me.
I have a job where I have a work phone and a personal, like my phone, you know? So I have a separate work cell phone, and when I started, I was like, I am never putting my email on my personal phone. I am never doing that. I do not want to be in freaking Jamaica at a wedding for someone to be able to access me from work. I don't want that. I don't even want to think about it, you know? And so I really actually like that they give us work phones. I know for some people it's annoying, but I like it because for me that's a very clear boundary. And a lot of the time, as long as I don't have a blood drive that's happening at that moment, I will turn the sound off on my work phone, which I know a lot of my coworkers are like, and I'm like, girl, you need boundaries. But I'll turn the sound off my work phone, and I will literally put it in my office, like in the house, so that like it cannot interrupt me in my evening or on my weekend, you know. Like people are like, you
need that. I mean, that's also, I feel like that's why people like, you don't ever want to get out a personal number or something at work because you're going to get called. It's the same idea.
Yeah.
Let's stop doing work in our personal lives. Let's stop taking work home with us.
For sure.
It's a big one for me.
Yeah. Are there other boundaries that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I think another big one is I just found this app. I literally just think it's called time blocking. But it's the idea that you set up specific times that you will do work versus whenever you will kind of have some like free time or decompression time. So on the app, and you can also do this with like your regular alarm clock and things like that. But let's say like I have something to do, a big project that's going to take me several hours. I'll work on it for an hour and then my phone will go off and it'll tell me I need a 15-minute break. And then I can take that 15-minute break. I can go outside. I can eat a snack. I can get on my phone, whatever. And then when the timer will go off again, it'll tell you need to get back on it. So I think that can help break up your day and break up the overwhelming feeling, because if it's just like a breath and it's great. But then sometimes you need the reminder to get back on it.
Yeah.
So that way you're not getting more overwhelmed later when you never got back to it.
Yeah.
So I think that can be helpful. I wish I had found that forever ago for myself, because I have a really big habit of just work, and then when I'm over it, I'm like, I can't do it. Or even just for the day, if I'm like, okay, I'm just exhausted, like I need a break, I'll take a break for 12 hours. Like I'm not coming back to it for a long time.
Yeah.
So this app really helps me, especially on the days that I feel really overstimulated or overwhelmed. Yeah. It's a huge helper for me. I think one of the only other real things I had on there, getting a planner. That was a huge one for me. I don't know how people can work without planners, but I've had a planner every day, only in my work life. I don't use it at home. I'm not very organized at home. I'm very organized at work, which I always think is funny. But getting a planner so that way you can actually plan out your day and you can write down what needs to be done, and then you can check it off as you go. I'm a huge check-off person. Yeah. Do you think you are?
I organize my days a little differently now, but I do love lists.
Lists, yeah. Okay, yeah. So lists. So for me, because you do a lot of your organizing on like computers.
So I'll put everything on my calendar. So I kind of do time blocking. It doesn't adjust for like the 10-15-minute breaks, but I will put, if I have to email someone, if I have to call someone, if I have a meeting, if I have to run posters out to a blood drive, or I need to visit a blood drive, or whatever it is, that's kind of how I do it. So I feel like my calendar would probably stress some people out. I do color code it and whatnot.
Oh, cute. I love that, but that would really stress me out. I could never do that one. Yeah. I feel like that would really overwhelm me, and I'm the type of person who feels like their day can't be planned out for them. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a personality thing or an ADHD thing or whatever, but if I feel like if it looks too planned out, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. I will be fluid. Sometimes I'll have something at like 9 o'clock and then I'll move it to another time. Like if I got a call that I didn't expect or something like that, because I have tasks on there that maybe don't have to be done at a certain time. But the reason that I like it is because if I put something on my calendar for Friday at 2 o'clock, let's say, I just know that it is somewhere on my calendar and it takes it out of my brain for now. Like, it releases me from having to think about, I need to follow up on that blood drive and see if they want to do a second blood drive. Like, it helps me to just I put FU and it makes me laugh every time.
Oh, for follow-up.
But I'll put like this church FU or whatever on my calendar. It's efficient and funny, so it works for me. But anyway, so I'll put it on my calendar, and then that way I'm not stressing like, did I follow up with them, or did they ever say that they wanted to do a second one? I just already have it somewhere else, and it can go out of my brain. Yes. So that's why it helps me, because I don't look at the day and I'm like, oh my God, I have so much to do. I'm just like, okay, I trust past Morgan to have taken care of today Morgan.
Yes.
So that today Morgan gets done everything that she needs to get done.
Yes.
And each week on Friday, one of my tasks, like recurring tasks, is plan next week. So I'll go in and I'll just put in everything, and then as other things come up, I'll put them on my calendar where they make sense.
I like that a lot. I'll do the same thing, but I just don't assign times to it. So which I think that's the part that stresses me out, is I need to be able to choose when I'm gonna do it. I have to be able to say, well, if I want a slower morning, I can do that because I'll just do these things in the afternoon, or like vice versa, or like I can split up however I need. I don't know. That's how it is, the only way that can work for me and that I can get everything done. So whenever I'll go through and I'll update my planner for the whole month, or like every Monday I update my whole planner for the week of whatever I have to do. And then anything I know throughout the month is already on my planner, but I just can't assign times.
That's fair.
It does not
totally
work
fair.
for me. And that's when I use the blocker though.
Yeah.
That's where that comes into play for me. So I know I can like still have time. So maybe I don't know what that is.
I think
personality
I
difference.
think the point though is finding an organization. Maybe you don't have to change jobs. Maybe you can just change the way that you're organizing your schedule.
Yes.
Maybe you can adjust, find a different system that might help you adhere to work-life boundaries.
Yes.
Something like that,
Yes. Speaking of change, I feel like this is like one of the last ways I can really advise people to, you can't quit your job. I get it, but you do need to change something up, is literally changing up your work. So we were talking about this earlier, that if there's something in your job that you're really hating, go talk to your immediate manager or your immediate boss and kind of like let them know what you're going through and ask for some type of change.
Yeah.
So whether that's like, hey, I need to maybe work with a different team for a little bit, or I need to go on a different project, or I need to change up my hours that I'm in the office. Like I need to come here 30 minutes late or later and leave 30 minutes later. Like, I know not every single one of those options is going to be available for people, but figuring out what is an option to you and figuring out where you can make that change.
You also never know if you don't ask. And maybe you ask to adjust that way, or maybe you ask like, oh, can I work from home one day or something like that? And maybe they say like, well, no, that's not going to work. But that is going to signal to them that, oh, you kind of need something a little different. Yeah. And maybe they have a different idea for something. Like, no, we couldn't do that, but we could do this. And they might offer something up. Yeah. I have a friend who did this in their job. She's a therapist, but she had moved to a different job setting, and in that setting she was having fewer direct one-on-one time with clients and a lot more paperwork. And she was like, a lot of the reason I got into this was because of that one-on-one time. And so she went to her boss and asked, is there a way that I could have that? And I don't remember if the boss found like a particular way for that, but I think now her actual solution was she went to fewer days at her full-time job and took up a 1 or 2 day a week practice with another.
Wow.
So I just think it's really cool. Like, you never know until you ask. And if they say no, maybe that's a sign you move on.
Red flag. I'm
maybe
leaving my job.
Maybe you've even asked about, can we do something different, and your boss hasn't allowed that. Then I feel like at that point, the first thing, because you don't want to leave your job just to go into another job where you're going to inevitably get burnt out.
Yep, that's exactly what happened to me. That's why I have 10 jobs on my resume. So I just kept doing the same thing over and over and over.
Exactly, but maybe you could be doing the same thing in like a different field or in a different setting. So for example, I feel like teaching is such a hard job. So shout out to all our teachers. But I feel like teaching is a really good example where there's so many different settings that if you have had your first couple years in your teaching job and you're like, this is not for me, I hate it. There are a lot of different things. Like, I've had a lot of friends who are teachers who have either moved from public to private or vice versa, or have moved. Even schools differ a lot in how strict they are in what their teacher's curriculum is, or
what you can wear.
Or going from a class size of like 33 to like 18. That's a huge difference and can make a huge difference in your day-to-day.
So it might not be teaching you hate, it just might be the situation you're in.
So whatever field that you're in, ask yourself, you know, if you're looking at quitting or moving to something else, do you need to abandon that totally?
Yep.
Or do you actually like that job, and what you really need is a setting change, a location change,
a team change.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I feel like for me that would be like the biggest thing, because I feel like that was true for me.
Yeah.
I was doing event planning before, and planning blood drives really is event planning. But for me, having the like smaller, more frequent drives that kind of run in a very similar way was this is a better form of event planning for me than having several huge big projects a year, like the festival that I planned before.
Yeah.
And I just, in total honesty, I just discovered I'm not really that great at big picture event planning. It stresses me out because I'm like, because in my head I'm like, everybody has to like everything. And
that is hard.
With an event that big, I'm going to let somebody down. But it's like with a blood drive, you can't really do that because everybody that's there is a volunteer. Like they're willingly donating, they're willingly giving their time, you know. So it's just a totally different. It's a different industry. It's a different type of event planning, and it's just totally different. So I feel like it's possible that whatever you're doing for your job, you could just be doing somewhere else, and it might be more fulfilling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, how do you think you go about finding those jobs? Do you think you just kind of type in some keywords, kind of networking? And
yeah, so I think there's actually a filter on LinkedIn that you can type in certain jobs, and if you're looking for something specifically like remote or whatever, some fields I think are more suited to reaching out to recruiters directly than others. Like for instance, my husband, I know he has worked with recruiters a lot, and he's in the software field. Has Mason ever?
Yeah, a couple times.
Okay.
I think that's maybe how he got his current job.
Okay, yeah. So I know in a lot of tech jobs that recruiters are used a lot. I would say for me, it was mostly just connections. So honestly, if you're thinking about it, like don't worry about telling people that Jared and I were at.
I only got my first job because I lived at the same place that you were living at.
Yeah.
And then I needed a job, and the office gave me a job.
Yeah. So I feel like for people who are thinking like, oh, I'm at the end of this, it may feel defeating to talk about, but at the same time, if you tell someone, I'm looking, people are everybody's eyes as soon as they see a job, and maybe you have to filter some of that chaos, because everybody might be telling you like, oh, you could get this, you could get that, you should apply for this, and it's like, okay, you have to filter that a little bit, but it does expand, I feel like, your connection.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing that you can do is updating your resume to be really geared towards what you're looking for. Yeah. So my resume was filled with like property management and leasing agent. So I knew that I could go into something that had kind of a management role to it, but I knew I did not want a management role. I was like, I don't really feel like I thrive as a manager, and I don't want to do that.
That was what was taking away from your sales, right?
Yeah, it was taking away from, like my sales, and it was too much. Yeah. And so I decided I really wanted to go into, it's a weird thing, but I really also like customer service, but not in a way that I'm handling the mean phone calls. I like the interactions with new people, I guess, and then staying up to date with them. And you could do that as a leasing agent. You cannot do that as a manager. And so I made sure, and I was really interested in marketing. So I made sure to change up my resume with those transferable skills that I did have. So instead of having on there like bookkeeping and like managing this much revenue and blah, 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 I was like, those are not skills that I want to highlight, but I do want to highlight like that, we filled this many apartments and we did this and this and this. And it helped me find the jobs that I've had since switching paths, I guess, a little bit. Makes sense. I think that that's a big thing, that you look at the transferable skills that you do have instead of feeling like, well, I don't have a degree in that, or well, I can't do that, I've never done that before. What can you take from what you are doing now into what you want to go in, and how can you like make that resume geared towards that?
Yeah. I think another big thing is cover letters. Do you ever write cover letters?
Yes. That is how I got my current job.
Okay.
Which I had never done before. I felt like they were stupid.
They make a difference.
But they do. Because there's so many people applying for jobs all the time. So how can you stand out a little bit better?
Yeah. I would highly recommend writing a cover letter. If for whatever, they do take a little bit longer because you really do need to address whoever it is that you're applying to. You really need to say, like, this is why you'd be a good fit specifically there. But yeah, a cover letter is huge.
Yeah, it's like getting a phone interview in before, like, while just sending over the cover letter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like getting your foot in the door already, letting them know who you are.
Yeah.
It's very cool. So yeah, I feel like those are some ways that, first of all your signs that you need to leave.
Yes.
Second thing, what to do if you can't leave, how to change it up. Third one, what to do when it's time to leave.
Yeah. And if you're looking for a new job, just maybe you could just DM us because maybe we'll keep our eyes out for you.
Yeah. That's actually a really good idea. I feel like I know jobs all the time that I'm like, oh, like I don't know anyone who's looking for a job right now, but I'll keep my eyes open.
Yeah, definitely.
That's funny.
Honestly, community blood center is always hiring.
Go do something good, people.
Yeah. So I feel like that's probably a good place to wrap up.
I think so.
Yeah. I hope that you tune in for our next episode.
Yes.
Next week. We'll see you then.
We'll see you then. Let's cheers.
Okay.
Cheers.